I'm Edwige and I'm a coastal magnolia. I live in coastal Florida and it's a beach community. Freaking leaf blower. That's why filming outside sometimes is so difficult. But that's my husband, so I can't kick him out. Alright, let's try this again. Hi everyone, I'm Edwige. I'm a coastal magnolia. I live at the east coast. Mosquitoes. I live on the east coast of Florida. And this is Tip. This is my rabbit hunter. No rabbits today. So living in coastal Florida, the beach is my inspiration for a lot of things that I do, and I like to use reclaimed wood. This is a fence picket from our fence project. We redid our fence earlier this year. And so I saved some of the fence pickets because although some of them were a little bit rotten and worn on the ends, I felt like I could really do something beautiful with them. These got a really good cleaning with a wire brush, and I don't sand them until I finish what I'm building, and then I sand everything at once and kind of work with the grain and work with the different aspects of the wood. Like this one has a neat knot in it that could be the start of a fin or the start of an eye, and the end of this one is really neat with the different grains in the wood coming out. So I'm just gonna pick through here and you know, see what inspires me. So I hope you enjoyed this video and you learned something new, and if you would like to like and subscribe, I really appreciate that. So we have a lot of work to do. Let's get started. All right, you gotta go, buddy. I'm just using a wire brush from the hardware store to get off any dirt, any loose paint, cleaning up the wood a little bit, and then just a hammer to make sure there aren't any nails that could be a problem later, and you will see. And then just, you know, getting off all the nails, any kind of screws, checking the boards once more. I love laying the boards out and spending a lot of time studying the shape of each of the boards and what would make sense in the layout. And the end of this one, to me, really started to look like the you know, the front of a fish, the snout of a fish. So I found two that really just made sense together. And in my mind, I can see it start taking shape. And so that's where I start. I just look at the boards. There's an eyeball there. I'm looking at making a fin at the top, and you can see me drawing with my finger, like what is the shape of this fish going to start looking like? And it really is just a process of putting the boards on, taking the boards off, what looks good, what makes sense. And that's how I start. I'm just drawing it out in my mind. Once everything is laid out the way that I want, I take standard wood glue and start gluing the pieces together. And I'm just using my Bostik air nailer. It's an 18 gauge brad nailer, and I think I'm using either 1 inch or 1.5 inches. I think it's 1 inch. So 1 inch 18 gauge straight brad nails. And excuse me, I'd rarely use anything larger unless the wood is really thick, but I want the nails long enough that they're nailing through not only the top board, but also the boards that you're nailing to. So whatever you're securing your fence pickets or pallet wood to, the nails need to be long enough, or your brad nails need to be long enough that you're going through both pieces of wood and they're really secure. But the wood glue I think is very crucial. That gives you a really good secure bond to your base, and that way you won't have anything to fall off later. Sketching out the fish, the shape of the fish, is probably my most favorite part of this whole process, because I'm working with different textures in the wood and the knots, and just rough edges and making the natural appearance of the wood, making that part of my fish. And I'm sketching out the body, making it form around the knots. So one of the knots is going to be the eye, and then there's a split in the wood that just looks like a natural mouth. And on this piece, I am going to make the top fin and the bottom fin part of the whole piece. Sometimes what I'll do is I'll cut the body of the fish out, and then I'll make the fins separate, and I attach the fins to what I've already cut out. But this time I'm going to make it all one piece. I hope that makes sense. I think it makes sense, but this is just this is the best part to me. The next step is just cutting out our shape that we've just drawn out, just cutting it out with a jigsaw, and just being careful. And I'm sorry the camera angle is so bad. I'm still trying to learn camera setup and everything, but so just taking my jigsaw and cutting out my shape, being careful not to press on the wood too much, because it can cause some splitting, and it can cause your boards to come loose if they're not completely secured. And right here is where I start to have a little bit of an issue. There was a nail, it's actually a screw, that I did not see before, and I kept hitting it with my jigsaw. I thought maybe it was a piece of sap, because the sap can get really hard. But then I just decided, you know what, I'm just going to cut around it and we'll figure it out later. But as I was cutting, the screw did come out, and I ended up just being able to move on from here. And there it goes on the ground. But yeah, it did dull my blade, and I didn't realize it until much later how dull the blade was. But I decided to add another piece on the back just to secure that top fin that was getting really loose, and then also to re-secure the bottom fin that had already fallen off. Now I'm just finishing up the trimming of the design. It's really starting to take shape and look like a fish. And although I do follow the sketch, I do sometimes, go off course and trim out a little bit more. Just as things start to come together, I feel like, maybe I need to make this a little flatter. And you can see here, I sort of trim off a little piece of that bottom fin, because he was looking kind of fat, like maybe he needed to go on a little diet or something. Now is when I do a good sanding front and back, and I pay close attention to the edges to make them nice and smooth, and kind of round them over a little bit, and then I just smooth out any rough spots. And now the fun begins. I decided to do a base coat of a silver metallic. I think this is just Rust-Oleum metallic silver.
Go get my blue. I gotta water the blue down.
Zola is following me with her eyes, and she sees me walk into my studio. Oh, there goes Mom. I better follow. Here we go. She's my Velcro dog. I'm applying the second layer of paint in three different shades of blue from three different brands. And in hindsight, I really should have poured these in a cup, watered down the paints, and then applied to the surface of the fish, rather than putting the paint directly on the fish and then watering it down, because what I wanted to do was the alcohol drip technique. And what that does, when the alcohol hits that wet acrylic paint, it will separate, it will cause the acrylic paint to separate, and then tail just fell off. But the alcohol causes the acrylic paint to separate, and then it exposes the silver underneath. So whatever your base layer is underneath, the alcohol will expose it. So when I'm spraying the alcohol on the acrylic paint, it didn't really work that well. There are a couple of spots where you can see the paint starting to separate, and it did create a really cool texture, but it just was not what I was looking for. So I went and got a newspaper, hoping to try and salvage at least the second layer of paint rather than starting over. So the newspaper is soaking up some of the alcohol and the excess paint, and it just kind of gives it a different look. I'm really liking that. I really like the different layers and the depth that it's giving to the fish. Now we have 2 layers of paint. The silver layer from the spray can, that is layer 1. Then when we applied the blue paints, that is layer 2. I like sealing in between acrylic paint layers because we're not done yet. So I'm just using polyurethane to seal down that blue layer and give it a nice smooth finish. And this should give us a good base for the next layer. You could probably use Mod Podge or any kind of acrylic mediums to seal down that acrylic paint. And I just had polyurethane on hand. Y'all, I am missing an entire section of this video recording. I guess I just didn't have it set to record. But anyway, this is layer 3. I'm just taking a wadded up paper towel and just dabbing away at certain areas, just taking away some of the paint. It was a little bit too much paint. So I am dabbing away in some areas just to give it another, just some more texture. I'm smoothing out the edges so that the edge is not in such a hard line. I don't really like that. So I'm just, and you can see here, I'm wiping up some of the paint that did get on the places that I didn't want it. So that's really all I'm doing is dabbing away, and it just creates more texture and more of a natural line rather than a hard line. I don't know what happened to my recording. I think I hit the button to record, but maybe it was on photo mode. I don't know, but it happens. But I don't give up. You just move on and continue with what you're doing. This is what I wanted to show y'all, and it worked beautifully. This is the exact same technique that I used on the middle part of the fish, the white part, that I forgot to record. So all I have is some watered down white acrylic paint in my cup, and I have some alcohol in a little squirt bottle, and I'm just applying it to that white acrylic paint. And y'all, look at that. Look how beautiful that worked out. I am so ecstatic over this. Again, just taking my paper towel and dabbing away at the edges, blending in those 2 spots so they look really cohesive, and like I did it on purpose. And I'm just blending that edge together, just like you would if you were doing gradient color on a canvas. And I'm just so thrilled. Look at that. I did add a little bit more in there, and this acrylic paint is it's watered down. It's really thin. You don't want it soaking wet on your surface, but you do want it watered down. And then the alcohol, I'm just dabbing the alcohol on there, and I just am absolutely in love with this. It turned out so well. And because I have a very serious case of tinkeritis,
I decided to add some more details using a dropper bottle full of homemade alcohol ink, but the opening in the bottle is a little bit too big. I bought some bottles from Amazon that have a precision tip needle applicator, so I decided to transfer the alcohol ink to that instead, and it worked out a lot better. I made a mess in the process transferring the ink, but it worked out a lot better. I was able to get cleaner lines, and I'm just outlining the top and the bottom of the fish, just adding additional details, and it really turned out very, very nice. I'm very happy with that. I told y'all that tinkeritis is a real disease. No, I'm kidding. I really did intend to do this. So I'm just taking a paint marker and outlining some more of the detail where I had applied the alcohol ink. This is just a neat way to add more definition, more layer, more texture. You can't have too many layers, in my opinion. And I'm just outlining some of the different little cells that we created with the alcohol ink, not the alcohol ink, the alcohol drip, defining some of the places on the fin and that top line. And then I go with a few different colors of blue, and some of the pens were dried out, so I'm definitely going to have to go to Joann and use my 40% off coupon. But the blue Sharpie worked out really well. It was a neat, very vibrant blue. I'm just outlining some of the cells. This is really a fun and relaxing process overall. I didn't use the blue Sharpie too much. I didn't outline a whole lot on the middle of the fish because I didn't want to lose the really cool detail of the different cells that were created when I dropped the alcohol ink onto that white layer. And I think that was like layer 3 or 4. I don't know, I lost track. But it's just a neat way to define some of those details. Really cool process. And it's just really mesmerizing and fun. This probably is my favorite part of the whole thing is, we're getting towards the end and he's almost done, and you can really start seeing a fish. You really start seeing how cool and funky he's going to end up being. This is really, really fun. And then once everything is dry, going to apply another coat of the polyurethane and let everything dry once more. I decided on one of my vintage glass marbles for his eye, and I'm just using, I think, U6000 to attach it on there. And I should have done this before I applied the top coat of polyurethane, but I just took some blue acrylic paint and cleaned up the very edges of the fish, and I did this all the way around with just a small brush, and that just cleans up all the rough edges. It cleans up all the drips that I've made, and it just finalizes the piece, makes him look like he's actually finished. Here is the finished dolphin. I love using the alcohol drip technique with my acrylic paints. It adds such a great level of texture and layering to my pieces. I really enjoy working with alcohol and acrylic paints. I hope you enjoyed this video, and please do consider subscribing to my channel and helping me grow. Thanks, guys. Cheers.